Choosing the state in which you're going to form your company is a big decision. We know that there's a lot of different information out there about Wyoming, Delaware, Nevada. Those are the three that you most frequently hear about. Another is actually New Mexico. We're going to talk a little bit about why each one may be a right decision for you. So first, let's talk about Delaware. That is one of the most frequently chosen locations in which to form a company. And I think if your company is going to be seeking to raise capital from private equity or institutional investors, it has really big plans, then Delaware may likely be the right place for you. It has a lot of things going for it. That is where many investors like companies they invest in to be formed. It makes it easy for them. There's something called a court of chancery, which quickly and very easily will settle disputes among shareholders, officers, directors, so internal disputes of a company. That makes it really appealing to institutional investors, especially since they will typically have a team of attorneys who are based there. So I think if you're going to be raising capital in the near future, then Delaware is a great place for you to form your company. Most startups, though, start out with maybe it's a friends and family, or it's just the founders who are going to be investing in the company. I think for those companies, you're better off not forming in Delaware. Delaware is very expensive. It's an expensive place to form a company. It's an expensive place to maintain a company. We're also not aware of a firm like ours that has Delaware attorneys that will be able to quickly and easily both provide you with guidance, great documents, and set up the company for you in a way that really makes sense. Wyoming, on the other hand, is very low cost to start up your company. Of those three, of Wyoming, Nevada, and Delaware, Wyoming is the least expensive place to form your company, and it's also the least expensive place to maintain your company. There's no corporate tax, and there's also very low annual fees. You're not being nickeled and dimed in Wyoming like it seems like you are in Delaware or Nevada, with business licenses and franchise tax and variable fees that many entities will face in those states. A great thing about Wyoming, which you definitely don't get in Delaware, is privacy. So the names of the members, managers, officers, directors of a company are going to be listed in a public record in Delaware. In Wyoming, none of that information is listed in the Secretary of State's website. It's also not even provided to the Secretary of State. And this is a big distinction between it and Nevada. In Nevada, you supply the member, manager, officer, director information to the Secretary of State, and then the Secretary of State promises not to make that information public. In Wyoming, you don't supply it to the Secretary of State. We have the responsibility as your registered agent to keep that information in our files, but it is not listed in the state records. Nevada is also interesting in that it has really tried to mimic the asset protection laws of the state of Wyoming, and it's done a pretty good job. There's been this sort of what I call an arms race among these various states, and Delaware's thrown into there as well, providing asset protection, veil-piercing protection, charging order protection, all of those sorts of things. But one of the interesting ones is that Wyoming has put in place a statute that specifically addresses the protections afforded to single-member LLCs. Nevada has not done that, at least not to the best of my knowledge. They haven't provided that same level of protection to single-member LLCs. So that's something to think about if you are forming a single-member LLC. Nevada's fees are also much higher than both Wyoming and Delaware in many cases. And so that's something, if you're cost-conscious, Wyoming is a great place to form your LLC. Now, if you're really concerned about costs and perhaps asset protection is not your primary focus, a great state is New Mexico for forming your LLC. So Wyoming does have an annual fee assessed to LLCs formed in a state, but interestingly, New Mexico does not. New Mexico, you have a formation fee, and then you're required to maintain a registered agent in New Mexico, but there is no annual fee, at least at this point in time, paid to the state for the privilege of maintaining your company there. That's a huge benefit if you're very cost conscious. New Mexico, not great for asset protection in the same way that Wyoming, Delaware, and Nevada are, but it is private, and there is a great deal to be gained from privacy when it comes to asset protection. So your name and address and your members, managers, directors, officers information is not listed in the Secretary of State website in New Mexico. So you do have these different benefits. I think if you're raising capital, you may want to consider Delaware. If you're concerned about asset protection, Wyoming is a great place. If you're concerned about costs, again, Wyoming is a great place. And if you're really concerned about costs and not really as concerned about asset protection, then New Mexico can be great. As a final point, it's always possible to move your company. This is something that I think many miss. And many great companies start out as Wyoming limited liability companies. They form it in Wyoming and see how things go. There's maybe a small group of initial founders who manage the company, incubate it until things start going well. Then maybe they convert it to a corporation in Wyoming though. And then they go and they raise some capital from friends and family and issue shares and perhaps give out options to insiders. And then when they're ready to go and raise money from the capital markets, from private equity and angel investors and doing A, B, C, D rounds and those sorts of things, then they move the company to Delaware. But during those initial stages when every penny matters, so they can focus on their business plan, starting it in Wyoming really is a great idea and makes great sense for the overwhelming majority of entrepreneurs and business owners and founders.